You.
Fantastic. Happy to be here. Well,
Happy
mainly
to
because I'm
have
home.
you.
Not
Say
really.
again.
I said mainly because I'm home and, this beautiful space.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
cool.
okay. So let's talk about what's on the back of your wall.
I got a lot going on back here, so I've been busy. So I got camera gear all over, but then you have the neon cat for good luck.
I
And then
just
on
thought,
this side, you can see soundproofing, and then some of my favorite photos from the past year or so.
oh, I love that. That's okay. So were there lips on the other side of the wall?
There's lips, there's lightning, and then there's a sign that says the future is yours to create. I basically had a 16-year-old high school girl design my little office setup, and I'm just rolling with it. Um,
I love that. So funny. Oh my gosh. Well, Peter, we met 2 years, three, we might have met 3 years ago, but I met you in like we got together 2 years ago. And
yeah,
two things stood out to me about you. One, you were like, we're gonna go walking around the lake. We're not gonna go sit at a coffee shop and go to lunch. And I was like, who is this man? I love that. So we went on this wonderful walk, and it was like actually like a legit little hike. Like I think I was sweating. So I love that. And then the second thing that I just so deeply appreciate about you, and you are such a good example to me of boundaries. I messaged you to get together for a second time, and I think I canceled like very last minute. And
yeah,
you
yeah,
were like, with all due respect, let me know when you're ready to schedule and not cancel. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, like, dang, I never reached out again.
And
Because
then somehow you tricked me to come into whatever we're doing here. So clearly, I don't have
oh
strong
my
boundaries.
gosh. Well, I just honestly, it was one of the first times that somebody operated within their boundaries in a really beautiful, kind, loving way where it was like, I really value my schedule. And
Yep.
if you're not able to honor that, not and saying honor it, I don't remember why I had to cancel or whatnot, but things happen. But you
Yeah.
just really, your calendar is something that is really sacred to you. And that was just really meaningful to me. And it set the expectation like, I cannot cancel with Peter. And if I have to, it's like, now I know. And, someone else, since that time, someone else was effectively saying the same thing. And it was just helpful to know like, flexibility is a value for some people, and keeping with what you schedule is a value for others. And so I just really appreciated you setting that boundary. And I wanted to hear about you and how that has become a value for you and what that looks like with your clients.
Oh man, there's so much to dive into there. So I think a lot of it comes from there's only so many seats at the table of life for people, be it professional
Mm,
or personal. And I'd say about 10 years ago, I really started setting the intention for like just cultivating like high quality people. And I've done a really good job of that where I look at my circle.
mm,
It's very frustrating to not have time to see all the people I care about. I tend to be someone
yes.
who really loves the project or really loves to build. I'm very passionate about what I'm doing. And I know
Yeah.
that if I want to be successful with it, I have to be focused. So, um,
Mm,
yeah, I think once I became really clear on like what my values are and what I'm looking for in others,
mm,
and really only created space for them, the quality of my life just went up. And like it's hard to
mm.
don't want to step on toes. Like um, you don't want to hurt feelings. I don't want to make anyone feel bad, but there's just I think we only have so much time here.
We only have so much time.
Yeah, we got to use it well. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, I have a border collie, and
I,
whenever I'm
I was about to say, you just threw a ball. I don't know what's happening. Can we
she,
see your.
whenever I do Zoom
Hello.
she just like freaks out and
Oh.
wants to play and hang out. So I have like a chalk outline of toys that she's brought me, trying to figure out which one I'll throw for her. Or she'll be happy with me the whole time.
This is so cute. Oh my gosh. Okay, so one of the things, there's a couple of different things that I wanted to ask you, but based on the fact that you just had your puppy join you, which is just the cutest thing, talking about just you are so with what you do in life, and how would you describe that?
It's funny, yeah. As I was thinking that that question was going to come up, and it's one of those questions where I'm just like I hate having to like describe what I do because you have a few different options, right? You go like the professional route and what I'm kind of doing for work. I'm fortunate that I love that, and then it's like what are the passion projects, and I always have
Yeah.
like one big one. There's always like a few little side quests that I'm kind of like just feeling out. And then personally, like, what am I doing that's just like for me and like,
Mm,
helping me get like the mental health and physical health and all of that.
yeah.
So if
Yeah.
we like use a category, just go professional, like, um, so on the surface, I do photo video, right? But then a little bit deeper with my experience building my own business, two separate businesses. So I do a lot of like the basics of like content marketing. I can do like headshots. I can do videos
Hmm.
or if your individual wants to kind of like promote themselves. I think where I really provide value is I think just some of the strategy behind whatever is being done. And I like to treat my
Right.
clients the way I would have liked someone to treat me when I was starting out. Really, like the first business I launched for myself, I feel like
Mm,
a whole lot of money. And then if you
right.
go to, you know, a photographer, they're going to sell you photos. But,
Yeah.
for me, I like to approach as like, okay, what's the deeper thing you're really trying to accomplish here? So people reach out like, hey,
Yes.
we need to do some marketing stuff. I'm like, okay, well, what are we trying to create? And they'll say photos. I'm like, okay, so what are we trying to get done? Like, what's your business? What are you trying to sell? Who are you trying to speak to? Where are they? What makes sense to you?
Yes.
I really like those conversations because they often lead to like, I feel like a win is when I can tell a client like, hey, I'm not the right person for you. You actually need someone like you need a social media marketing person who's there with their cell phone and can really be hands on.
Mm,
That would
hmm.
be a better investment until you get to like that next little like whatever boost of profit, and then okay, now we want some polished images to support that strategy that's already in place.
Yes.
So professionally, like communications, and then um, as far as passion projects, there's a few things I'm excited about right now. I'm still pretty active with the Horizon Day Camp. They're a summer camp for children with cancer. They're just
Mm,
outside of Baltimore City. They have a 6-week program. I was actually just there the other day. I had invited a few different friends to tour the property, and
nice.
it's awesome. It's just like I love that it helps keep things in perspective. I'm not
Mm,
stressed out whatever I'll find to be stressed out about that day.
yeah.
I'm not highly concerned with like international affairs when I'm there. I'm like, hey, here's like something really beautiful happening because a whole lot of people came together to support this 100 and I think they're up to like 170 kids this summer who
Wow.
are going through a really tough time to just have a really beautiful experience and like what you want your faith for
I love
something.
that.
So that's really cool. And then um, I'm working on building out a new brand that I'm really excited about. And it's all like about
Mm,
what's happening in like the ag space and then like agricultural space and then like trying to hang out with horses again. Like the whole like 16-year-old get
yeah.
like that's like what's running my life. I'm like I just want to pet the
Oh,
horse.
I love that.
So done a lot of cool stuff with that. I'm happy to dive into that a little bit later if you want. And then personally hiking. I've been doing a lot of road trips.
Fun.
Out my dog Callie, working on a lot of stuff with her. She's been really fun and
Can we just
really
see her again for everyone who just joined? Like, let's just see this beauty
she is the
queen.
star of the show.
Gosh, she really is. You can just keep her in your lap.
You can find her at the Calico CALIECOST on Instagram. She's adorable, and we're gonna make her a superstar for sure.
That is so cute. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. Well, I maybe we'll just drop her little account in the chat after this. Well, you just said a whole bunch of things, and the reason why I wanted to give context because, and you did such a beautiful job of explaining who you are, because I understand by just way of you sharing the things that you're interested in and pursuing right now. I feel like we all get a glimpse into your heart and who you are, and that's exactly what a strong brand does, is that it unveils almost like a flower, almost like opening, so that we really see so many different nuances and sides angles of the individual. And you effectively are helping people build their personal brands and their brands just in general. You know, some of the creative strategy that you bring isn't just for the individual entrepreneur, but it's for events and brands in general beyond that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I like to inject like my values into people, as well, like be their cheerleader and all that. I think it's like I genuinely love like my like hair stands on ends when you're having like a conversation with someone who's like just
Mm,
the leap on something like yeah,
yeah.
follow your dreams, do something cool. Like who cares if you fail? Like
Yeah.
have like lean into it, try to make it happen, and to be a part of that, it lights me up inside. I'm sure you feel
Yes.
working with people like it kind of
Right.
reinforces your passion for what you're doing.
Mm. And a question for you in regards to when you were like, who cares if you fail? Where did you learn that mindset and how did you actually come to truly believe it?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it was like there was a moment. I think there's a period in my life where like a big transition point for me was when I was 29. I was living in Mexico, working in international sales, and um, really unhealthy. Like I was, big smoker back then. Big partier, like eating like garbage. Really just like treating my body like a carnival, and like it was fun in some way, but
Mm,
also like, I mean, that just gets real old. And I was really unhappy. I was like so stressed out all the time, and I I was with someone. I was with a girl. I really loved her, and I wanted to be better because of her. And we'd always talked about getting healthier together. And then at one point we're thinking about having kids, and I was like, oh my god,
mm,
we're gonna have kids. Like it's serious. Like you got to
yeah.
together. So that served as a bit of a catalyst for me to make some big changes in my life. Sales was not for me at the time, and came back to Maryland, got into the wellness space, so became a massage therapist and pain management. During that time, I was like, I had to quit smoking. I wanted to start taking care of myself. Wanted to eat right because how I was feeling had an impact on the quality of my work, the kind of person
Yeah.
I was for the client. And I think, with that work in particular, it's like you need to be like a solid foundation to make the healing, not to be like super woo woo, but there is something to be said for like the physical manipulation of the tissues to get them to relax. But if you have someone who's
Mm,
like really in their head or just like all like just like having dealt with traffic around DC or whatever, it's hard to
right.
get like just like pause and breathe. And
Mm,
so I just started to be like, I was on a mission to get my mind right. And
yeah.
um, God, I don't know how many books I read, but um, where I am today is a far cry from where I was. I was very like anxious when I stopped smoking, stopped, drinking, stopped doing all this
Yeah.
stuff. I was like, oh wow, that was all masking some pretty severe social anxiety where I was like unable to leave the house without like panic
Mm,
attack, like sweat. And um, there's something that happened earlier in my life that showed me it was possible to change. Like it's possible to change the way you think. And once you accept the fact that it is possible to change, then if you're not happy with something, it's just like it's on you. You know what I mean? Like you don't have any
yes.
excuses. Um, so it took a lot of me
Wow.
challenging my victim mindset for my stuff that had happened and excusing shitty behavior and taking just like pretty extreme accountability. So your question was around like overcoming fear of failure.
Yeah.
um, I think there's a lot to be said for throwing yourself in the deep end a little bit. Obviously, like,
Mm,
you don't risk physical, like real injury, but like, for me, my psyche couldn't distinguish being in a one-on-one conversation with someone I don't know and being chased by a great white. Like it was ridiculous.
mm,
Doesn't know what's going on. So like a super basic, simple situation like would just cause me all kinds of distress. And my deep
yes.
was escapism. So like, how do I not feel what I'm currently feeling? Um, and when I force myself to just not use those vices and not
Yeah.
escape and just like sit, it's like okay, you can like start to expand your ability. Yeah, I think there's also a lot to be said for like in personal training, you like strength training, you have progressive overload. So like this week you're doing 5 pounds, and then next week you're doing 7.5 or whatever, and you're
Right.
just going from there. I kind of applied the same principles to a lot of just like my mental stuff. So like, okay, being at a business networking event was like a nightmare scenario. Like it still kind of is,
Mm,
but like you tolerate it a whole lot better these days. And but like, can I meet a friend for coffee at a small
mm,
little shop? It's like, okay, like that's like on the edge of what's comfortable. Now, can I meet a friend and their spouse, someone who I'm not super comfortable with, start to
right.
rub? And um, can I, like, I hated phone calls or doing stuff like this.
Mm,
So I'm like, can I start doing that with people I'm comfortable with and then expand to people I'm less comfortable with? Expand to
right.
like really challenging situations, like pitching a project for thousands of dollars, and you have to prove what you're saying and come across
Right.
competent. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I think there's an answer somewhere in there.
Yeah, well, I love this. First, I love the storytelling approach that you take. I mean, it's so integral to what you do every day for your clients, which is telling their stories. And for those of you who just joined, Peter has just an incredible multimedia company, really capturing.
it's it's all right. Like, don't make me sound
Oh,
like
no, I think it's incredible. I love seeing your pictures and your videos. I mean,
very good.
and you know what? I think that this is a beautiful opportunity for you to say, yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think my mind
yeah.
goes to value over volume. Like I really, like
Yes.
can get in where I
Yes.
can get in and make an impact there, but I'm not like
Yeah.
like
Well,
nor
and
nor do I really
defining
want
terms.
to.
Yeah, say again.
Nor do I really want to. Like
Right.
I love the scale that I'm at. There's some challenges because everyone's a little bit green in the space, and it's like again it might just be like a restaurant owner who's like, hey, I started a new spot in Greektown, Baltimore, and they're over 50, no clue what to do with social media. So how can I
Yeah.
be a good resource for them and
Right.
advise them in an ethical way and make projects that make sense for them and give them
Right.
an take on what I think the best course of action is. Like that to me
Yes.
is really cool.
Well, and so it speaks again, that speaks to your values. And every single one of our stories, I talked about this a little bit yesterday and in yesterday's live talking about the knowing process. Each one of our values need to be rooted in a why and an associated story alongside that because it gives it legs, it gives it a breadth and depth that other people will be like, yes, I'm nodding my head because I'm emotionally compelled by the story that you're telling. And resonance, like the resonance that I feel while you're sharing. So even that whole challenge of like, well, it's incredible, let's define terms, right? Some people define incredible by the quantity, whereas you're like, wait, for me, incredible is quality. And I was saying it in that regard as well. Perhaps it's not copious clients spreading the US. However, the quality of the output speaks for itself in terms of your standard of excellence. And even the fact that you're prioritizing small local business owners, like that's something that I've really appreciated is that you're so integrated into the community of the Baltimore area. Again, that speaks to the value. And so when we're looking at just a detour for a second on personal brand development, when we're talking about constituting and creating a personal brand, we have to go inward and we have to know what we value in order to thus inform the manner in which we execute business. Because if you weren't clear on your values, you might pursue quantity over quality and thus outgrow. And if you weren't clear on your values of being community minded and focused, you might not take the time to advise someone who can't even afford you. But it's a value of you to be able to share and expand the community in general. It reminds me of David Brooks' book, The Second Mountain, talking about I'm operating it for the good of the community rather than for the good of the individual. That's a very different approach to life.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think and a lot of it does come too from like I feel like I get really strong feedback every time I deviate from my personal values. Like almost
Mm,
like a lot of stuff starts to fall apart. And so there was a
mm,
time where as I was growing, I was seeing this ongoing problem where people, like I said, would reach out to me for like photos or videos or whatever it would be. And I'd ask some pretty basic questions of like, who are you trying to speak to? Like, what do you want them
yeah.
to do? where are they? You know, like all the like just like the super duper basic stuff. These are
Yeah.
people who lead like heavy duty organizations as well as like, oh, like they, I don't, that piece is just missing somehow. I don't know how that happens or what that's about, but
Yes.
there was a moment where I was like, do I start a marketing agency and really grow? And like,
Yeah.
just exploring that. Like that, I think there's also another reality where like, I love my camera. Like they have taken me like all these really cool places. It makes my life so much richer. And like,
I
um,
love that.
I also have a real hard time with project management. It, it was eye opening as my business grew and the projects being larger and larger. And like I know
Mm,
everyone's doing the best they can, and everyone's overloaded with all these different priorities. But it's
yeah.
really hard to like have a phone call with someone like you did with me, and like,
Yeah.
hey, you need to do to prepare, and then like me, they don't do what they were supposed to do, and then it's like, okay, now we got to scramble and find a way to
Mm,
MacGyver a successful outcome out of
yes.
a team that didn't do what they said they were going to do. Like that's also like that's
Yeah.
really tough. The bigger you get, you run into more people need to be doing a certain aspect of that project.
Yes.
There's like more room for like people to fall short, unfortunately, and it sucks. It's annoying.
Yes.
I'm not at my best when I have projects with a lot of that going on. I like it harshes my mellow. It like bobs
Mm,
because I let it, but still it does. So I feel like
yeah.
this member what I have going on.
I love that. And Peter, as you're saying this, it just reminds me of potential vanity metrics that all of us can be tempted to chase without conscious awareness, which could be monetary growth, size of the organization, number of clients, these different KPIs that actually could have nothing to do with what we genuinely want because we've never actually analyzed what we want. So again, kind of going back to like developing that strong brand, knowing our values, but also knowing what we want. Do I actually want a lifestyle business? And I've had a lifestyle business to an extent for the last few years while I was going through hell and back processing, my relationship, my marriage ending, and then kind of, okay, who do I want to be? I had never done the work to analyze that, much less so what do I want my business to look like? And so I was able to have this business really serve and facilitate the curation of my ideal. And what a blessing that is. But for so many of us, if we're blindly chasing what everyone else says we should want for the way in which we live our lives, we're never actually going to be in control of it. And so, this whole question of what do I want and really sitting and doing the work, like you know what you want for your business, and thus you're able to operate accordingly. Because once you start, I think what's the benchmark? It's like once you get between like 1 and 3 million, you make like hardly any profit. You're because you're in like, okay, we've got to get expensive technology, we've got to get expensive project management. It's just like everything becomes so much more expensive until we scale to like the 5 to 10 million mark. But there is like, man, keep your business to under like 500,000 if you want a lifestyle business, depending on what it is, because then you start needing a lot more support, whether that's interpersonal or the technology side, and it just becomes way more expensive to run the business. And so it is like, what do I want? What do I want for this business? What do I want for my life?
Yeah, I think along with everything that went down, and when I hit that 30 benchmark, it was like I think
Mm,
been like, okay, I want peace and freedom,
mm,
and that doesn't mean that I think that there's so much value in exposing ourselves to like stressors in a way. So it's not like, oh, this
yes.
is like, this person's mildly annoying or they're doing something, so I'm not going to. It's like you overall. I'm constantly evaluating like, am I finding peace in my life? That doesn't mean that I'm not
Mm,
traffic or I'm not going to have projects that are kind of hectic and frantic.
yes.
But that
Yeah.
kind of guides a lot of my decisions, and I'm really grateful. I feel like it's really easy to speak to this stuff too. I think the fact that like my business is in a place where like financially I have the ability to do that. I think there's
Right.
also a reality where like um, it's easy for me to sit here and say I'm designing my life around freedom and peace because of my financial situation and what I'm able to earn with my business. Um,
Mm,
I don't know. I feel like I just need to like mention that because I know there's a lot of people that might be struggling a little bit more. They can't just be, oh, I'm gonna design my life around freedom and peace. I think there can be
Mm,
suck that you just have to like muscle through and figure it all out as
yes.
you can. And yeah,
Yes. Yeah, and what a beautiful point you're making. So, just for those of you who just joined, we're talking about how think of it as a bowling alley. What we want are the bowling pins, and our values are the bumpers guiding us forward to it because they do help inform the decisions that we make. They help us say yes to certain clients, say no to other clients, predicated on our objective goals of what we want. But we have to know what we want in order to establish the values that serve as boundaries to guide us forward. And to that point, knowing what we want without actually doing the work of picking up this heavy bowling ball, throwing it down the alley, and like doing the work to achieve that goal, which is perhaps I want freedom and peace for my life, you know? Okay, and I also want a successful business. But how do those coexist together? Because I think that there are times in our life where it's like we want to be healthy and in shape, and we also want to eat all the dessert. So, how do these kind of conflicting wants coexist together? And are there even seasons to pursue different wants over others? You know, so that's a whole other. Have you ever found that to be true for you? That's a whole other discussion, but I think
it's
it's
an
important.
ongoing battle. I think there's so much
Yeah.
like I feel like my values, even my values, I feel like are a bit of a moving target. I find like what I value today, and it's not drastic differences.
Mm,
I think at this point in my life, like there's some core values that I just think are kind of rooted in there. But I feel like even like in the past like 5 years, there's been some shifts towards other things that I kind of want, and just making sure that I'm aligning what I'm doing toward that end. But a lot of the I feel like I learned so much through my experience in the gym that was applicable outside of the gym. So like,
mm,
everyone wants to go to the gym and they want to get muscles and they want to lose weight. But really, like if you dive into like how to make that happen, you kind of need to be setting yourself toward one or toward the other, and then you go through like
yes.
bulking and cutting cycle with it always like
Mm,
forward, like progress, hopefully if you have the right trainer. And then even like if you did want to get into like the vanity aesthetics, it's like, all right, you want your shoulders to grow, like you're going to design a program around that because you don't have endless time, energy, and resources. So
right.
like you kind of have to prioritize those things. And so
Yes.
as someone who loves building, I'm always kind of like adjusting the knobs and like saying like, okay, like right now I'm very much in the season of like I want to build something super cool, especially since like we're halfway through summer. A lot of the stuff that I'm
Yes.
working toward um, is seasonal in effect. So, and I'm a little bit behind where I would have wanted to be. So, it does come at a bit of a sacrifice of like, I feel like on the social situation where like I don't have as much time for friends, the people I love, the people I care about.
Mm,
Like, I still show up fully when I'm with them, but there's definitely that struggle. Um, but I have found that like, yeah, I can go through these seasons of like doubling down, focusing on trying to make whatever this thing is like really happen.
yes.
And it might come at a bit of a cost. Like there's a trade-off. Like what is that quote? You probably know. There's that quote about trade-off where it's like there are no easy decisions in life, only trade-offs. And
Mm.
God, I forget who said it and how they said it. It was way
I'm
more
gonna
than what I
just
picked out.
because we're live.
See if you can find what I'm talking about.
My only trade-off. Let's see what this says. All right, there are no. Okay, let's see. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. That's Thomas Sowell, A Conflict of Visions, Ideological Origins of Political Struggles. That's the book that it's from. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, within that, it's like, what
Yeah.
is, you can only have one priority at a time. That's another thing I feel like when
Mm,
I feel like I have to do more and more when I'm taking on clients. Like,
yeah.
because I can't tell you how many projects I've started where they're all excited because I'm a very like enthusiastic person, and whatever you feel like, whatever mountain you feel like climbing, by the end of our conversation, you'll be like packed up
Let's
and ready
run
to go.
it.
But then when you start marching, you're like, wow, this is really hard, and like
Yes.
be tough. And so even simple things like video projects, like um, I try
Mm,
to do my best to say like, hey, like do you have bandwidth for the next like couple of weeks to like really make this
Yeah.
a priority?
Yes.
Because it's not super comfortable to 25% of the way start a project and then
Yes.
come to find out like, oh well, we have this big, conference that we're
Yeah.
all going to, so we can't do this right now. And now like our whole
That's
timeline's
so
out of whack.
good.
Like or simple stuff like, did you read your script ahead of time? It's so funny to hear myself calling
Yes.
out because I just did it to you by not doing what you said ahead of this call, but I stand by it.
Yes, no.
Yeah,
Well, I think you've already proven that to me in other regards, so this was just a fluke. I mean, it was so, and frankly, maybe this is a good call out for me to go back and revisit the email that we sent. Was that actually as clear as it should have been? So I'll
but
take responsibility there too.
I not that it's I want to come up with an excuse, but I think it's also nonsense to come up with excuses. And when you come up with excuses, you hold yourself back. I think I just need to
Mm,
move forward and honor the emails
mhm,
that you send because you are important to me, and this whole project is exciting. I love seeing you
mm,
do it, so I want to see you thrive in it. So I need.
mm.
I think your communication was very clear.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'll go back and just triple check. And that's actually, isn't that so beautiful about radical responsibility? Because if each one of us, regardless of whether it's the customer or the client, the partner and the partner, the father and daughter, whenever we're in a ideally mutually beneficial relationship, the strength of it is really predicated on the degree of radical responsibility each individual assumes over themselves. Because if I know that if there's a breakdown in communication or a conflict, and I'm going to be looking in the mirror and seeing everything that I did, I have to trust that you're going to do the same thing. Because otherwise, I'm going to come to the table and say, hey, here's every area that I'm going to grow in. And they're going to be like, yup, look at all those things you did wrong. And it's like, well, wait a second. What about your list? What
Yeah,
about you assuming radical responsibility? And then it actually becomes an unequally yoked relationship because one of you is doing the work and one of you is not. And that will never last.
yeah. It's so funny. Did you ever read? I might have even mentioned this on our hike, but there's all those books on nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg, and like,
Mm,
oh man, if you are a human that interacts with other humans, you should probably read that book because it is the best
I
at
love
just again just like conflict resolution. Like, how do you show up?
Yeah.
Set the
Yeah.
stage. So there's no avoiding the fact that we're not going to agree on all the things, but there
Right.
are ways in which we can address those that if navigated successfully make us even closer, which is like such a
Mm,
thing. um
yes.
yeah, but
That's good.
it's funny because there's no chapter in those books, by the way, if I were to offer a critique, that talks about if you're the one who does the work just like you said and the other party doesn't. It's just
Mm.
it's not, you know that's really tough. You
Well,
just
it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous because in those relationships where only one party is assuming radical responsibility for their growth, taking ownership of, because when we think about in relationship, if they've got the individuals and the relationship, there's three entities here in relationships. And if I'm taking responsibility for me and then also, taking some responsibility for the relationship, but then they're not taking responsibility for the relationship or themselves, then I'm starting to handle a lot more, rather than us both holding up. I think it was Khalil Gibran. Gibran says that it's effectively like the two individuals are like strong, sturdy pillars, like holding up then the essence of the relationship. Now the relationship is resting upon two independent people that are now interconnected and interdependent through the I guess modality of the relationship itself. But if the other person isn't being their own pillar, much less so being able to have any kind of ability to support the relationship, it is completely weighs so heavily on the person who's holding everything up by their own desire to be responsible.
I love all that. And then, do you have a knowing book list? Because you're mentioning some books. I feel like this is like all in the
Yes.
of like my whole like. I used to joke and call it my library of shame. Like every personal development book that you could possibly read, I was like, I need to figure out how to be a human. But you're
How do
mentioning
I
stuff
be a
like I haven't come across a lot of this, which is nice. 'Cause I feel like it's been a while since I've come across a book
mm,
that was like really framing. I don't know, find something like super unique and new and interesting. basically because I'm enlightened, I've learned it all and figured it all
Yep.
out. So it's hard. It's hard to find books that are on my level, you know.
Yeah, I well, while we're joking about this, it's actually really interesting. I want to add an interesting thought into this conversation of becoming enlightened and what books we choose to read to get to that point. Peter, I have found, and I actually bet you found this too, that there's an element of being told through the process of inputs through other books and other thought leaders. Then there's also the process of being taught from within, and that's very different. That comes through contemplation, that comes through the state of being, where so much of kind of those external inputs and being told come through doing by reading. And then obviously we can still have time of contemplation and just sitting and allowing for our information processing system to maturate and allow for us to process everything we've been told. But the being taught is almost like a conjuring from within, and an inner knowing. The word intuere is the Latin word for intuition, and that means to be taught from within. And so if we're allowing us to access our inner knowing, it's almost like we're being taught things that we then, if we're told them, it just adds on to the foundation that we're starting to develop because we've allowed for our inner self to speak to us.
Yes. Let me see. So I was listening, but I was also wondering if this aligns with something I've kind of been chewing on recently about how to actually like integrate all this, because I feel like with all the access we have to information these days, it's easy to get like overwhelmed. Like I don't
Yeah.
know, like audiobook, or I think we do podcasts. Hopefully a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But it's easy, and I get in this thing where I'm bombarding myself constantly with whatever it may be. But then I'll be like, at the end of the day, I'm like kind of like reflecting. I'm like, did I learn anything? Like, what did I take away from it?
Yes.
Didn't. So I found
Good question.
that's where I was like, this process of like, yeah, I want to have like one good book that I'm kind of chewing on, or like one good book, and then I want to, while I'm listening, try to identify ways to like incorporate that. And like, let's say it is interpersonal. Those are really fun ones because they're like, it's never ending when you're trying to figure out how to be more effective
Yes.
being around people. Then like, all right, can I like put it into practice somehow? But there's another piece too, which is just like, and that's why I think hiking is so valuable for me, because that solitude in nature gives me time to integrate that lesson. So like the book is the class, the interaction with someone is like the like actually doing the work in the field, but like that's that alone time in the woods or whatever it may be tends to be like really kind of being integrated.
I love that. I love that so much. That there's actually in my new book, Knowing, which I don't know when it's coming out, but it will. I'm done. It's not my. I don't know when it's coming out. That's not my job. It's divided into 3 sections, and the first is like descending. It's called the descent, like effectively going inward and doing the work, and then the second part is integration. Really allowing for, okay, we've gone inward. We're seeing, we're coming to know all of the mess, all of the beauty, all of the darkness, the shadow, the light. We're coming to know everything. And then it's like predicated on who I want to be. What does the integration look like in order to thus activate agency? And okay, let's go to work. Let's actually put this into practice. Let's have that inform the output. We have to have integration. Viktor Frankl says between stimulus and response is choice. And I feel like that choice is likened to the integration process. It's kind of like this conjuring of like, who will I be based on right now this decision that I'm going to make? Because this choice has everything to do with what happens next. And we have all the power in that moment, which is so exciting. To your point, at the very, very beginning, for those of you who are just joining, Peter shared a little bit of his story about how, there's that time of almost like falling off of David Brooks. We mentioned this book earlier on. There's 2 mountains. The first mountain is we summit the pinnacle of our own personal mountain where we're pursuing ourselves, where we're pursuing everything that we want and dream of. And then we kind of have this almost like falling down the mountain where we're like, is this all there is? And then we reach this lowly place, and then we have the opportunity to climb the second mountain, which is very much so for the purpose and good of those around us, the community. Or we can go back up the first mountain and give it another shot. And so that whole concept of kind of being insular focused and living for ourselves, and then waking up and then integrating. It's just I love what you're saying, Peter, and this is so incredibly important to this conversation of creating your brand, because in essence you're creating who you are. You know, how do others perceive you? And obviously that needs to be predicated on the truth, but so often we're focused on how others perceive us rather than, well, how do I perceive myself? Who am I alone? And
Yeah.
that's something I question too. Like for you, as you've been advising your clients on their external persona, how do you kind of coalesce it to really understand who they are and make sure that that's well presented as well in the work that you're doing?
It's a good question. I think a lot of it comes from, it's hard to answer for, so if I were to think highly of well, I do think highly of myself. I think it comes from my ability to have like more real conversations. Like,
Hmm.
like, hey, like, I
Yeah.
think, how do I want to say this? I think a lot of it is like just genuine empathy. So I have a
Hmm.
really, especially at this point in my life, I am really good at connecting people on a human level. I really throw that around a lot, but it's really to be able to sit across from someone, whatever their title is, and then have a really
Yes.
good conversation and get a good feel for where they are, and then demonstrating that I'm like, oh, I imagine it like this kind of happening for you, and it's really important to achieve this because it would allow
Yeah.
you to do this, and that kind of like active
Hmm.
listening really sets the stage for more like vulnerable reflection. It doesn't mean like every coaching call or whatever I'm
Right.
doing is like a crying session, but it's like they once they are kind of like seen a little bit, it's easier for them to see themselves. And then it's easier to have those conversations around what it is that they're trying to create. And then I think there's something beautiful about being seen by someone and they don't
Hmm.
run away from you, or they don't like they have your number, but they're sitting there just like, again, not that I'm like, oh, I love all my clients. I do love all my clients. But I sit there and just like, I have love for people. I'm like, I see you're going through this. It's really hard for you, or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Seeing them, I know this sounds like super woo, and
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
but it's and I also have, so a friend of mine is watching and she's asking, I don't know if you can see the chat, you probably
Oh.
can't, but she's asking me where the bunny head is because this is gonna sound super weird, but like I had like a whole app for our Zoom call the other day. It's like a whole thing. It was like super distracting. Melody, I see you, and I'll do the bunny head.
Melody on LinkedIn.
Uh, but
I love it.
yeah, so but I think, I mean, it's just like, I think the superpower in life can be learning how to uh, sit more comfortably with people. I feel like, as woo woo as that may sound, but I think you want to have a more profitable business, you want to have a stronger brand, you want to have be able to assemble a team that believes in you. I think just learning how to connect well with others and be
Mm,
empathetic about what's happened to them. One of the many
mm,
books that I've read about how to be better around people is I try to go into, some sort of interaction, just see how much you can, not like in a creepy way, but see how much you can learn about the other person. I think we're so quick to
yeah.
talk about ourselves and be like, oh, look at this thing I did, or check out my whatever. And I'm guilty as hell of
Yes.
that. Try to make a point of like, let
Yeah.
me see how I can really focus on hearing this other person. And I will say, from when we did go on that hike, I feel like I was so surprised that you hadn't read a lot of the books that I had, because you have a really good way of asking the right questions, listening. Like, you're really taking
Mm,
in what the person is saying, and I think that I would attribute to the success you've had and the success I imagine you'll have moving forward. Because I do,
mm,
and I feel like that is a superpower. We live in a world where everyone wants to be heard, but very few people want to do the listening.
mm.
Learn how to listen well. Like, man, like, you will find yourself with an abundance of great friends, people that want to be hanging out with you, people that want to support you with whatever it is that you're doing. And
Mm.
you know, mentioning like the value of like my media business, like I am probably like most proud of the impact that I've had with like a relatively like small audience, like
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
especially with like some of the like volunteer fundraising that I've done, like the way I've been able to like talking about it, like I feel like the community that I've been able to build around myself.
Mm.
Um, to
Yes, I love that.
like it's awesome. Um,
Mm.
so I forget. Are we on for an hour? Is that our
Um,
goal? Do we have a time limit?
we're I actually was just about to say that I was just
Yeah.
about to wrap us up. We're done. Um, no, I was just thinking about what you were saying, and I know that I actually do need to head off pretty soon. I actually am at the airport. I'm in the lounge to fly back to
You're
DC.
one of those people just yammering away at your computer while I was just trying to
I
chill out before their flight, and you were just being obnoxious. It's like,
I even have a little light. I'm really one of those
yeah,
people.
like you're like,
Really bad.
who does
It's
she
really
think
bad.
she is? She probably doesn't even go to this airport.
She probably doesn't even go to the airport. Wouldn't it actually be hysterical? Oh my gosh, I'm just imagining if I was to just like go set up my office inside like
Yeah,
an airport to sound cool.
yeah, exactly. Sorry, guys, I'm really busy. I'm about to hop on a flight.
I gotta go.
Yeah,
That's so funny. What you just said, Peter, about being able to listen to people and ask people questions, that is just so incredibly important. And I'm still laughing about what you just said. So I'm trying to be serious, but that was so funny. Um, what you said about being able, like the art of listening and the art of, I think that, I have this whole value around conscious living. And I almost wonder if there's an element of conscious listening, because if we're listening, but we're not actually emotionally present and our consciousness isn't actually activated, I cannot tell you how many times people have talked to me and I'm like, I'm so sorry. What did you say? Like, I'm looking at you. I have nothing in my hands. And I did not hear a word you said. And so I think that the antidote of that is doing a better job to just know how to exist in a conscious state. And so many of us, I think, actually have our minds wander. You talked at the very beginning about almost like mastering your mind. And that's something that is so incredibly important. That's actually a goal for me this year is like, how do I master my mind? This Saturday, I was doing just some house projects and I just found myself wandering. And I was like, wait, I'm not in the present, I'm not in the now. And I think that the more that we can really train our minds and be aware of our minds, even if it's okay, I'm going to intentionally, consciously choose to plan for an event that's not in the now, and that's okay. We need to be able to do that. And or be able to say, I actually really want to be present. I haven't been home in a while. Let me mentally be home. Let me be in my house right now. That's amazing because then what we can do is the more that we train our minds, the more we can train our minds to then be conscious listeners with those that we love and our clients, to your point, because I think your clients are way more loyal to you because they feel seen and known by you. So the way that you live is so remarkable, and I'm so grateful for you coming on here for the two reasons that I mentioned at the beginning, primarily, which is that you know what your values are and then you know what your boundaries are as a result of that. So I'm grateful to learn from you and along with you, my friend.
yeah, I appreciate that. It's good to connect with you. I know we're wrapping up. At some point, I'd love to hear more. So I made a point to not reach out to you to ask, what are you doing? Because we haven't really talked.
I know.
We don't have to lean into it here, but I would love to learn more about what's happening for you, and so we can connect offline at some point too.
I would love that. That would be great. Well, thank you, Peter. I'm so grateful for your time. And yeah, actually, I'm going to end this stream, and we'll still be in the studio for a few minutes so we can chat a little bit further offline.
I think I can do fireworks. Can I do fireworks on this? I can do confetti.
I can't do that. That's not fair, man.
You're enabled. I'm sorry, my my Zoom calls are like, it's a party.
It's really active.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, right. Well, that's a great way to go. So with that.